Hello, y'all. This is a recording that I'm doing of the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and I am going to do this as a premiere so that I can engage with y'all. But unfortunately, due to time and then this headache that I'm having, I just don't feel like I'll be in the right state of mind to do this live streaming later on today. So, we are going to talk about the life of Miss Jane Pittman. So, sorry, no, why I said James. Jane Pittman was born, I think in the early 1900s or very late 1800s. I don't remember even if we got that. I can't recall. However, she was known to be over 100 years old in the making of this book. So there are a couple things like I do in other live shows. I typically have questions that I want to discuss with y'all, and usually we discuss them all. I do have a couple, and do feel free in the premiere to ask other questions or say other things because I'll try my best to engage with y'all at 6:30 tonight Central Standard Time. So let's first start with the first question I had. So, in the beginning of the book, you are learning about her early life, and you are learning about her trying to escape slavery. And at this time, she was born at a time where she was born into slavery. And then when she was a young girl, she also was freed. And learning of how, what white folks did to newly freed slaves at this time was super horrific. I'm sure everyone in the chat already knows what happened and the stories, and you probably have stories from your family that will attest to the atrocities of what happened during that time. So during this time, Jane is with this group of people, and they're all Black people. She's with them trying to get to freedom and trying to get to a better life. And on her way to do this, there's this group of, or this gang of white men who are hunting down freed slaves. And they end up killing and brutally murdering and injuring a lot of Black folks. And Jane Pittman was hiding with one of the sons of the women who she was traveling with. So she takes care of this son. And I wanted to know, like, what was your thoughts on Jane raising that boy? To me, it felt like that's the natural thing to do. I feel like if I was in that position, which I am very thankful that I've never been put in that position, that I would also, raise that kid. That kid doesn't have a mother. He doesn't know anyone. I'm the only connection he has to this horrific incident. And even though Jane herself, even a kid, trying to shield him from this incident, didn't mean that it had a lasting effect on him. So having Jane and having someone that he can converse to and connect to during this awful time felt like a natural transition. Like it felt like, why not take care of this kid and bring and embrace him as her son, and also tell him how much his mother loved and cared for him. Because I think the love that his mom had for him was very evident in the very beginning of this story. And I loved how when Jane was telling this story, that she also, let the reader know, like, yeah, I took in this kid, but that didn't mean that this kid wasn't loved and wasn't cared for. And I must tell you about, the sacrifice that his mother and his little sister went through. And I think just this whole scene was very graphic and gruesome to me. And it just lets me know of the atrocities of mankind, and specifically white folks at this time, and just the malicious intent to hunt down Black folks and do these just despicable things was beyond I can even find time to articulate. And I also wanted to point out at this time, it just re solidified you know, personal things that I have told folks. Like, for example, when I've left the U.S. and traveled other places, and it was specifically like white communities, there were times where people would use their dogs as a way to like attack me. And the fact that this happened similarly at this time with these group of Black folks who were trying to, be free and live the free life, and how white folks use dogs to track them down and hunt them down so they can kill them and murder and do whatever they wanted, whatever type of violence they wanted to do. It just felt very, I don't even know the word. Maybe y'all can describe the word. I just felt that it was just very telling of that, even though these things happen in literally hundreds of years between each other, the tactics are the same. Like, I just found this scene specifically stuck out to me like immediately, and I just wanted to talk to y'all about it and see y'all opinions on it. The next question is, what do you think about how adamant Jane, when I say she, was about her new name? So for those of you who haven't read the book, this is very much a spoiler discussion. I forgot to say it in the beginning, but that's just what this is. Um, Jane was met by this white man, and I think he was from Ohio. Y'all correct me in the chat if I didn't say that right, but I think he was from Ohio, and she was adamant about getting to him. And let's be honest, she was a young girl. She was very impressionable. So she was like, he gave me this name, Jane. I forgot what her name was before because the book opened up to a name that she just had. And he was like, kind of telling her, like, this is your name and this is why this is your name. And, it just felt like I can understand how adamant she would be about this because I think that was one of the rare moments where Jane actually felt seen. And this is probably me projecting, but that's how I viewed it. I don't know how y'all viewed it. I want to know what y'all thoughts are. And like I said, I will be in the chat tonight if y'all are there. And I just felt like she was so adamant about feeling seen and just connecting her name and having pride in this name and what that name meant to her as a kid. It's just was wonderful for her. So she is going to seek it out. I think there probably was also a level of comfort and stability and safety wrapped up in her being like, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this name. And even when, she was with those group of Black people who were also trying to, trying to get to freedom, like I said in question number one, even they were, criticizing her about her name and being like, don't worry about that guy. Don't worry about this. Like, just, telling her things about her name. Also, what I thought was interesting in doing this time is that there was a guy who had some mental health issues who was traveling with them. And they all were talking about getting a new name. And Jane was like, I already have a name. I'm very secure in my name. And then another guy took her name and she lost it on him. She was like, look, that is my name. And he was like, no, you can't try to capitalize essentially on this name. Like everybody can have this name. And I think it was Jane Brown, I think is the name she had. And this guy had something else Brown. And I was like, wow, when it comes to ownership of something, and as a slave, if you grew up and was born into slavery, I mean, I'm just imagining, and you never had ownership of anything, and the moment you get this name, you would attribute that to your first piece of ownership, and someone's trying to share it with you. Of course, you will feel some type of way. Like Jane got beaten when she was in slavery by the slave owner wife because of her name. So it is clear that her name means something to her. And as you continue throughout the whole book, you understand more and more and more of why the name Jane Pittman, means so much to her. So I just really wanted to point that out. The next question is, why do you think she was adamant about seeing that man in another state? And that goes to the first question. I think that it was this security, of her being like, hey, I got to see him. He gave me my name. Maybe there's other freedoms he can give me. Maybe there's other outlets that I can explore with him. And I don't think she even thought about it really critically of what it would mean if she ever found this man. You know what I mean? Like, to me, uh in this lens, right, in the year of 2022, and as a fully, actualized adult, I was worried about her safety. I'm like, you are a black little girl who just got freed, who don't have parents, who don't have any adult that is helping or protecting you. And you're trying to find this other adult. And, who is this man? Is he trying to, commit any act of violence on you? I was just hyper vigilant about her safety and was feeling like maybe, this isn't the best route for you. I kept thinking like, are you sure you want to, find this man? I probably wasn't, not probably, I wasn't as like, abrasive in her face like the other folks were when they found out that she wanted to go and find this guy. But I was just like, girl, you gotta play this tape. But also, I think she was less than 10. So what tape is she playing? Her frontal lobe is still developing, right? So her amygdala hasn't even got, fully ready for her fight, flight, or fawn response or freeze response yet. So there is just a lot of things to consider. But I understand. I do want to point out that I was looking at it from like this century, this year, this like adult mind of being like, oh my God, your safety is at jeopardy. So that was just something I was thinking of. What do you think about the white man telling Joe that he owes him $50? So Joe is the husband of Jane Pittman, and I think his last name was Pittman too. He was the only husband that Jane Pittman truly loved, truly cared for, like the bottom of her heart. And even though she got married a couple times after that, she kept his name. And there are reasons why she kept her name. And I'm wondering what y'all think in the chat or in the description box below, like in the comment section. Like, what are y'all thinking are some other reasons other than what was said? Like, if you can guess of why she decided to keep his name as well. So Joe was working for this man, right? He was a sharecropper of sorts. And I think I'm saying that right. I could have said it wrong, but he was working the fields for this white man. But Joe wanted to have his own land. Joe wanted to provide a family, wanted to provide for his family, including Jane Pittman. He just wanted to make sure everything was okay and that she was able to live comfortably. He lived comfortably. He was just tired of working for someone else, specifically working for the white man. So he was like, no, I gotta go. So this white man who he's working for um told Joe, yeah, you can leave, but you got into a fight last week. I had to pay X amount of dollars to get you out of that fight. You did this. I had to pay X amount of money to get this. And then you had to do this, this, and that. And I had to pay X amount of money to do this, this, and this. And because of those things, Joe had to pay him that money, or this white man was not letting him leave his farm. And a lot of it had to do with greed and pure selfishness. Like, this white man didn't have anybody to take care of his land. Nobody took care of his land, which was stolen. Don't forget that. Don't sleep on that, right? He had nobody in his family that would even tend to the soil and to the crops in the way that Joe did. So he was like, look, I'm going to be as malicious as I can, and I'm going to set up just like arbitrary reasons and make it very difficult for you to leave my farm, right? And at this time, Jane Pittman is nervous for Joe, and she's upset with this white man, rightfully so. So to me, this is just one of those situations where it happens. Even there's so many examples, and y'all can list them in the chat, of how what I'm about to say plays out in contemporary terms. There are so many times with Black folks, Indigenous folks in this country where when they told us we're free, there were so many stipulations, right? So much fine print to those freedoms. It's like, hey, you can do this and this and this and this, but you have to jump over this hoop, jump over that, go underneath this, holla at that. You just have to go through all of these trials and tribulations just to get on equal footing of what a white person would have. And you see this played out with this story with Joe and this white man who owns this farm. And you're just like, wow, like Joe, the first task, the man was like, you owe me this amount of money. Joe and Jane sold everything they own to get that money. Then Joe had to go to, someplace else. He walked to Texas, like over 200 miles, to get this money to give it to him. Then he had to do another thing. The man was like, oh, well, I guess you gave me that, but you forgot about interest. You forgot about this. You forgot about that. Just kept moving the finish line, like consistently moving the finish line. And it's just like, then people like to say, oh, there's no such thing as white privilege. There's no such thing as, inequality among white, Black, and Indigenous folks in this country. And it's just like, not only have you taken this stolen land and done atrocious things, then you create arbitrary, asinine policies to keep you and generations to come in power and profiting on the things that you stole, the things that you pillaged, the things that you done that was so horrific that most of us don't even want to give it a word. So it's like, that is clear evidence that there are discrepancies in the way in which Black folks and Indigenous folks operate in this country and white folks. So that whole scene was just so atrocious and atrocious. And you like see it even today, like all these treaties, hundreds of treaties that has not been honored by the United States government is ridiculous. So it's like every time something happens, they'd be like, oh no, it's this, is this, is that, is that. And it's like, no, you signed these treaties, honor them. And it's evident that these treaties aren't being honored because pipelines are going up like gas price. So you're just like, this whole part, like this entire part of the book just had me like, just kept thinking of like in current terms and throughout history of how often the finish line is being rezoned, created differently, just out of the box, asinine ways to keep people in power to remain in those positions. And it also made me think about the book, The Color of Law, which is showing you historically throughout American history of how white people in power continue to move the line and create borders and infrastructure and power, and policies that was clearly meant to keep those who look like them in power and to be extremely discriminatory and unfair and inequitable to Black and Indigenous folks and brown folks. So I don't know. That was a little rare, but it had to be said, So the next thing I want to talk about is Albert Laveau, and I know I spelled this wrong, and I know that my Creole ancestors is punching the air, but we're gonna let this slide, okay? I feel it in my spirit that I spelled it wrong, and I was like, I should Google it, but then I was like, sometimes you just gotta step into your truths and just live your life and don't even worry about it. So Albert Laveau is someone who is chilling with Jane Pittman. So I'm gonna just say this right now. Jane Pittman did some real saint-like stuff in her life. Me right now, I'm just being honest. Me right now have little tolerance for racism, racist acts, and people who condone racism in my life. Like I listen, there is something. And what I'm about to say, and I'm not trying to take away no one's blackhood at all. I'm not trying to take away your experiences at all. But I also want to acknowledge that there is a difference in experience as it pertains to skin color throughout the African diaspora, right? And I have been living my entire life as a Black woman that is like visible. They're the only I if I maybe took a picture of my hand like this, you might be like, she can be from somewhere else. However, this body been this color, okay? Been this color. Didn't have like a lighter skin beginning and then got caramel along the way. No, I've been existing as a visible Black woman my entire life. I have seen, experienced some things my entire life as it pertained to racism and all type of other isms and intersectional isms, right? So for me, I'm tired. I've been tired. I've been vocalizing how tired I am, I think, since I turned 29. But, and that's been a couple years, I've added on that. We'll need to go there. But the fact is that I have lived. And in living, I just don't have energy. Like I'm exhausted. So like I have to put you in your racist views in my life, like just chilling, like no, I can't do it. And to be honest, even though I say that now, Jane wasn't afforded that luxury. Cuz the luxury to just not be friends or engage in like in my personal life with racist folks is something that I can do now. I don't think that was something that was just everybody could do because that wasn't the thing. Because at that time, and even now, there are more white folks in this country than there are Black. The population of the US of Black folks is 13%. I think it's over like 67% or something like that is of white folks. So clearly, there's a difference. So and especially right after being freed, I don't think Black folks have this luxury that I'm talking about that I have right now. So that's why I'm saying that Jane was a saint when it comes to this guy, Albert, because Albert just sitting on her porch talking about how he's sad and how he's talking to her about the things that he's done and how he feels bad for what he's done. And my thing is this, even in 2022, and I would say like a couple years ago, I don't understand what it's about. And I understand it, but I just don't care for it. It's like white folks coming to me to tell me about something they did terribly to a Black person and thinking that I am going to assuage them of their grief, that I'm going to release them of their deeds and their thoughts. And I've seen that trend happen to two Black women for decades, centuries probably. of white folks thinking they can just come to us and we'll just be the one to, be the forgiver and absolve them. That's probably the best word that I said to say, but absolve them of their deeds. That doesn't. No, I'm not doing it. And Jane being on the porch with this man, and he's talking about all the things like this man is like the KKK henchman. Whatever the local extremist groups in this area would do, he would go and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and kill this black man, kill this black woman, kill whoever. Any black person that made any noise and tried to get other black people to understand their power or get any black person to feel empowered and be like, no, I'm not going to take this from this white man. I'm not going to take this from this white person. I'm going to do this. And I'm, and believe in my, any black man, black woman, black person who did it, this group would hire Albert to go and kill them. And the fact that this man did it and then told her that and in so little words, that he is going to be called at some point to kill her son. Going back to this question, that boy who became her son, Albert, took him out. The guilt, the grief. And this is when I say that trauma passes on for generations to generations. Just imagine one of your ancestors going through something like that. You think that's not going to show up in your body in any way? You're not going to feel some anxiousness or some type of side effects of that traumatic experience, in addition to the trauma that her and that boy, her son, experienced when they were young? Ridiculous. It's just, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this man? I just kept thinking the whole time, the caucasity of you to come to this black woman home, telling her about all your terrible deeds, and then you were so afraid. He was ready because, this group was giving him a livelihood. And you just killed this lady's son like cattle. Like, how do you rectify that? And and the whole time I was like, man, then Jane Pittman did try to see him and did try to confront him for what he did. But I don't know if I'd have been able to survive that. Like, I feel like I don't know what would have happened, but it would have been a whole revenge plot to me, Moving forward to something a little lighter is Miss Pittman thoughts on rivers and trees. So in the book, she talks about rivers and trees in a very indigenous way of knowing. And I really appreciated how in so little ways she kept saying, sorry, y'all, my eyes are burning for some reason. She kept saying that water is life. So what do y'all think about her thoughts on how she talked about water? I think there was a quote that she said. Let me see if I can find it. Oh my God, forget the quote that she said, but it was like, all you need is, fresh waters and greens to clear out your system or something like that, and you'll be okay. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And when she talked about how, she just felt so much better being near, fresh water, and how she would go and talk to this old oak and how that oak was there before she was there and be there when she's gone. And, just talking to the earth just really reminded me of a book that I read probably 4 times now. I think it was 4. Sorry, y'all, my eye is burning. It probably was the lotion that I accidentally got into my eye. So it reminds me of the book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. And it just was very poetic, the way in which she talked about it. And I was wondering if y'all caught on to that. And it just made me be like, maybe I need to do more things to, get reconnected with my roots and, just be more conscious. I do know now, as a side note, that I am very weary of the plastic that I bring into my household. Feel really guilty for it and try my best to be as sustainable as I possibly can. Like as I possibly can. One of the things I did is, as you can see on this plant, it's a bamboo pole. There's a lot of poles that people use to, keep their plants upright. And I see that a lot of them is involving um, like those zip ties and plastic and all that. And I was like, nah, I need to get rid of it. So I just been trying to figure out just in like what small changes that would end up being very big changes of how to be more sustainable. I want to change out my light bulbs. I also want to start composting. There's like this composting that you can have like in your backyard or something like that, that you can start composting. And I want to try that soon. I also want to say being sustainable is not very accessible. It is expensive. Like choosing sustainable options is so expensive. And I know that people are screaming, oh, we need to be sustainable. Oh, we need to worry about the earth. But who has money? Like a family of four on a single um, salary, a single parent income, how are they affording to feed their children and be sustainable? So we really got to work on making things more accessible for folks. And we do need to be very conscious on the things we're doing to the earth, what we're putting into the earth, and the things that we are making. So big companies need to make changes, right? Looking at you, Target, looking at you, Walmart, looking at all these big brands, even TV brands, all of them need to work on making things more sustainable. And because that's where we need the big changes to start, right? And then we also need to make stuff cost friendly. Like things are just too expensive if you ask me. The next thing I want to talk about before we wrap up here is your thoughts on Jane Pittman not having a kid and not being able to have children. And I was thinking about in this time of how like, certain thought process was and like how difficult it must have been for her to date or engage with other people or see other people having children and just like what that could have done on her psyche. And I'm wondering like what y'all thoughts on that because I just kept thinking about that like that must have been very difficult for her. Or if she was like, I don't want to have kids, you know what I mean? That also would have been something difficult to even occupy that space at that time. I know just trying to put, again, this current mind in that time, I would have been really, I just feel like, I feel like childbirth for um, Black people who were enslaved and people who were newly freed, and even now we see it. Childbirth is traumatic. It's already traumatic. But at that time, you probably got pregnant, and not probably, most times you got pregnant without your consent. And then they would take your kid and sell your kid. Just imagine the generational trauma of that. There was this thing I was watching this video, and if I can find it, I'll put it in the description box below. But I don't even know how would I Google it to find it. But there was some video I watched recently, and these Black women were like, talking about police brutality and all those different things. And they were like, it's hard for us to raise Black children, specifically Black son, because I'll have this kid and it's already traumatic because of the health system and the mortality rate of Black women giving birth. So I have to think about that. Then I have to think about how many years will my kid be able to be a kid before other entities view him or her or the person, the kid, as not a child anymore. And then now that child is a grown adult, and now that child is gunned down in the street. So just thinking about that, like how long is my kid's gonna live? When is childhood is not gonna longer be childhood? So it's just like thinking about those things. And I think that with that in my mind, I think the act of having a kid would be super traumatic. Would be super traumatic in any time frame. You know what I mean? This one, or even during Jane's Pittman time, where her kid would have been sold. When I think about the book of the love song of W.E.B. Du Bois, that happened often. And although that was a fictional story and Jane, Pittman was a real person, fictional leads into reality. There are so many accounts, real life accounts that you can find mirrored in Jane Pittman, nonfiction, and also in the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. So I just was just thinking about that must have been traumatic to think about what could have been while you're not the reason why you're not having kids, if it's a choice or if it's, you're just a woman who can't have kids. So it's just so many different things I kept thinking about, that just set on the old noggin. So let me know what y'all think and your overall thoughts of the book. I again 5 stars. There hasn't been a Black classic that I didn't appreciate. I will say that I just don't know um, the other books that I will choose for the rest of the year. I kind of want to take a break from the Black classics and maybe start up in January. I know that's a break, but I kind of want it to be like a 6 month book club if it can be. And I might, pop up with another one, but I'm not sure because I'm looking at my shelf right here and I have so many books. And as I'm talking, like feel free to add any other things you're thinking about the book. So I have this right here that I would like to explore, but we've already read Not Without Laughter. We read Black No More. The Conjure Man Dies is a book that I wanted to read. We already read The Blacker the Berry, and we already read Cain. And I do want to read Quicksand. So out of these, right, we probably can do, yeah, I'll just make the decision. Out of these, in the premiere that's happening right now, or in the description box below, of the ones we haven't read, which one of these that you would be really interested in reading? And then we will just read that one. So the options are The Conjured Man Dies, Black Thunder, Harlem to Home to Harlem, Quicksand, and Plum Bun. So let me know what y'all thinking. Because I have a ton. Like I took out all of my Black classic books and I have a ton here. And that's just one little section that I showed you. So thank y'all for vibing with me in this premiere. Sorry that I couldn't do this live in real time, but I appreciate y'all being here and have a wonderful day. And don't forget to check out the other Black classic discussions if you haven't read those books. And I'll talk to y'all later. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also let me know like what has been your favorite Black classic book discussion moments and put them in the description box below because I do want to chat with y'all about this book and Black Classics Book Club just in general. So I really ask for y'all to comment. So see y'all later. Bye.